So this will be the tutorial on how to collect swabs for the different testing. I did put together two things that are helpful. One is this laminated copy of all of the different swabs. Yes, there are 5 different swabs, and I want to make sure you keep them all straight. Each of these is labeled with what test it's for, what location you swab in, and where you put it when you're done. In case you test both or all 3 of the COVID, influenza, and strep, you will need all 5 of these swabs. And because each one goes in a different location, it's important to keep straight. You can take this in the room with you. So I'm going to separate it by location. There is a policy about swabbing. Everybody will need to read this policy and ensure that they're doing it correctly. So we're going to start with the nasal swabs. So the 2 nasal swabs that we have are for the COVID rapid and for the influenza. There's a nasopharyngeal swab that comes in its own bag, and that is the COVID test. And then there's the throat swabs for both the throat culture and the rapid strep. 2 caveats: if you're going to be doing a COVID test, you will need to collect both the swab for the rapid test and the PCR test at the same time. Because if the COVID is negative, the provider may want a COVID PCR and the patient would already be gone. So ensure that you collect it at the same time. If the provider doesn't want it, that's fine, you can throw it out, but it's important to have it. Likewise with the strep test, you want to collect both the rapid strep and the culture at the same time for convenience. If the strep test is negative, then you can send off the rapid strep or the strep culture. So first we'll start with collecting the nasal specimens. Again, these are for the influenza and for the rapid COVID. Make sure when you're collecting, these are blank labels, but that you have plenty of labels. Labeling is going to be key to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the sample and making sure that this labeled correctly. Keep the envelopes. We are going to be inserting these swabs back into the envelope, so never open these up and then get rid of your envelope. So I'm going to have my patient step over here. So when we do a nasal swab, if we're doing a swab for any COVID testing, you will have to have on your mask, your shield, your gloves, and your gown. That is only for COVID testing, or if there's a suspicion of COVID. If you're doing the flu or the strep, you'll need a mask and gloves. The gown and shield are optional. They're not listed in the policy, but that will be your option. So this, we're going to do one swab. This will be either nasal specimen, the COVID or the influenza. So you're going to want to just get the tip of the nose, called the nasal vestibule. You insert it and you go 5 times on one side, and same swab, you go 5 times on the other side. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then insert it back into the sleeve. You're going about 1 inch into the nares. We'll go over labeling at the end. So again, that will be for the COVID rapid test or for the influenza test. Now for the for the PCR COVID test, this comes with its own separate bag and swab. This is a nasopharyngeal swab. You'll have to put this into the nasopharynx only on one side, as far as the patient will let you. This will get inserted into this liquid, not back into the sleeve. So tip your head back a little bit. So this one we're going to aim for going at least 2 inches in, not up, but up and back.
We're good.
It's going to be uncomfortable for the patient. This, you're going to want to open this, and there's a red line on the swab that you break it off, and then cover. This one you will put in the red bag that is labeled biohazard. This will also need to be labeled, and again we'll go over labeling. at the end. And then lastly, for the throat culture. For the throat culture, this will go back into the vial. And the rapid test will go back into the sleeve. I recommend taking both swabs out and putting them together, lining up the ends of them, and doing both swabs at the same time. So put both swabs in your dominant hand and your tongue depressor in your non-dominant hand. We're going to aim for the back of the throat, not the center where the uvula is, but where the tonsil beds are off onto each side. And we're going to aim for 2 or 3 swabs on each one. If the patient gags and you don't get a good sample, go back and get a better sample, do it again. If there's white debris on the tonsil or pustules or vesicles, aim for those as well. So 1, 2, 1, 2, and that's it. So 2 to 3 swabs on each side. Throw your tongue depressor in the regular garbage. Now make sure you keep your swabs straight. One way to know that is the one with the red line gets put into the liquid and broken off. So that gets inserted and broken off. And the other one will go back into the sleeve. Anytime you collect a sample, it will need to go in a red bag for transport through the hallways and deposit it here in the lab in the red bag. Now, note on labeling, anytime you label these, I would recommend using the labels that are generated. On that label that's generated, I want you to put 3 things. Put your initials, so mine would be BKB. Put the date, 6/7/21, and put the time, 12:15. And then put that on there. If you don't put that on there, you have the possibility that the hospital lab would reject your sample. That is a common thing that all labs, anytime that there is a sample collected, like to have the date, time, and initials that it's collected. If you have extra labels, please bring them into the lab and put them in here, because those will then be used for testing. And that's all I have on the sample collection.